YouLi is partnered with Wanderlust Entrepreneur to host their retreat community where you can launch your sales pages. Watch this video to get onboarded and go to community.wanderlustentrepreneur.com to get started. Hi, everybody. I'm Jen Fine from YouLi. We're here with Sean, who's our product expert, and we're going to be walking through our new Wanderlust Entrepreneur Retreat community members. And Shante is going to be providing a really good example for us today on the questions that you might have when you're launching your first retreat on the platform. So I'm going to go through a number of the basics that you need to know. And by the end, you should be able to launch your sales page, or at least know what direction you're going to go in to make that live and start taking payments and registrations for your retreat. Do you want to just give us a little background on your retreats as well?
Sure. So I am planning my very first retreat. So I'm a baby to this. I'm learning as I go. So I'm trying not to get overwhelmed by this whole process. But at the current moment, I do a lot of stuff, but I'm not considering myself a facilitator at the moment. So this retreat that I'm planning is actually in Sri Lanka at a retreat center there with a Buddhist monk who has spoken in my center a few times. And so his assistant that works there full time has pretty much put this whole retreat together for me, and it's facilitating the whole thing. I'm just responsible for getting the people there. so that's what I'm working on right now. And so now I'm, at the point where I kind of got all the pricing together, getting the final details together. And I go, okay, now I need to figure out how I'm going to promote this so I can get people there.
Excellent. Oh, I love it. Okay. This is a perfect, perfect scenario to walk through and get you set up.
Okay. I couldn't figure out if I was supposed to be using the template. So the template that was already there, or the sample that was already there, am I supposed to just go in and change the things that are already there to my specifications, or am I supposed to create a new one but kind of base it off of that one?
Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
By the way, I'm Sean. I'm YouLi's product expert, customer support. But no, that template, I wouldn't change anything in it. It's nice to have as a reference point to kind of see what is possible within YouLi and what you can do. But you kind of have two options. You could hit create new trip and fully create a new trip, and maybe you go back and forth between the two just to see how to do things. Or you can copy that trip just so you have something if you do really want the option to make changes to there. If you like that all the tasks are set up and you just want to change the names and dates, you could copy it and then change and start to change that information. I think it's nice to leave the sample trip kind of just how it is, so you could go back and reference just in case you forget a feature, or if you want to see how we did something in the sample, so it stays there just for reference.
So we're just going to jump in, and I'm going to share my screen here. So if you've logged into the platform on community.wanderlustentrepreneur.com, you will see this screen. So at this point, you'll have picked one of the plans and you'll be on a 30-day trial. So this is your opportunity to explore it and go live before you make a final decision. So here you have, when you log in, you're going to have two samples. You're going to have a sample retreat sales page and a course template if you want to do sort of just a course that leads to a retreat. So there's two examples there. And Shante asked a great question before, which was, should I just jump into this and just start editing the actual sample? Because it comes with a bunch of content to give you some ideas. And so the answer to that is it depends on how you work and what makes the most sense to you. Sean made a really good suggestion, which is that you might want to just copy it or save it as a backup, as a reference. So if you are going to use it, maybe copy it first and then modify the copy. And but you can also just click to create a trip from scratch. And so you could just go through that flow and just start from scratch. So if you're the kind of person who loves a blank page and you don't want to get distracted by somebody else's content, then I would say create a trip. But if you're somebody who really likes to have something that you're replacing, then I would go in and modify the sample retreat sales page. So, but before you even get into that, I want to make sure that everybody jumps into their account and changes their site settings. So when you come into site settings, this is where you're going to set your brand color. And so this is really important. Otherwise, your pages are all going to have YouLi branding. And the whole idea of the platform is that it should be branded to your to your brand for your retreats. You get to pick a brand color and then you can choose a text color. We do usually recommend white unless you have a much lighter brand color and you need a darker text color. And then you guys don't need to worry about the website piece of this for now. And you can choose a different font if you prefer from our Railway default. And you can choose how your links will look, if they're underlined, if they use the brand color. And then very importantly, you can choose your sales page style. So you're all defaulted to the sales page style. If for some reason you want to switch, we do have a left navigation style instead. So you can always explore that. It doesn't break anything. You can go ahead and just, change it to default, see what that looks like. And then if you don't like it, you can change it back. But of course, Dr. Sherry strongly recommends the sales page layout, which is one long scroll with the navigation across the top. And we also recommend if you do have analytics to do some tracking, but otherwise don't worry about it. So that's all you need to set here on the site settings. And then you need to jump into payments and make sure you connect it to your Stripe account. This is how you get paid via credit card. If you don't already have a Stripe account, go ahead and click to make one here. It's very easy to go through that process with Stripe. And then once you do that, you'll have an account and you'll be able to see both on the YouLi side when you get payments, but also on the Stripe side, which is where you process if there are any kind of disputes or any needs for refunds and things like that. So that's the really quick version of what you need to set up in the site settings and payments. And we will touch on towards the end of this, setting up your business profile so that you can publish it onto the directory. And if you are a launch or power up member, you'll also be shown on the public directory. So we'll talk about that in a little bit, but definitely go through and complete your profile here. And very importantly, before you launch your retreats, make sure that your business alias is exactly what you want it to be. So we're going to show you how this looks inside the sales pages, but recognizing that once you launch, you shouldn't change this because you'll break all your links. So take a moment, consider what is the perfect, short name here. So, if my company name is Mystic Adventures, I might want that to be Mystic-Adventures. Be sure and make this for your entire business, not for a specific retreat. So we'll show you where each retreat you get to name that as well. This is what goes into the URL or into the link that you're sharing out with people. Dante, does that make sense? Or do you have any questions on anything that I just covered?
No, that makes sense.
Wonderful. All right, well, then we're going to jump in and start showing you your retreat sales page from the back end. So for those of you who have worked with any kind of like WordPress or email platform or any kind of thing like that, very similar in the sense that you have kind of the view that you work in, and then there's the view that your guests have. So this is your view. This is where you see as people register onto the trip, you can see all of them come in and you can see when did they register and whether or not they've actually booked or paid in full. And so just to really quickly show you what this is looking like for people, you can click the preview as registered. That will actually take you to a little bit of a preview version of what your guests will see. So this is again using the sample content, and this is with my brand colors. So the reason why that's blue is because I just set that as blue under site settings. So that will be your color, and this will be your logo, which you set up in under business profile. And so this is what I was talking about in terms of having the navigation across the top, and you get to change the labels on all of these and decide which of these will actually appear. So this is what you're building. You're building a sales page. And remembering that this bar across the top is actually a control bar for you. Your guests will never see this. So when they see it, it'll be without that bar. So if you ever want to see what it'll look like for people without that bar, you just come in to the share trip link, click on copy for the public link, and we're going to open a new incognito window and load that up. And then I'm just going to switch to that screen. Share. So now you can see this is what it looks like for your travels. You'll notice that there's no bar on top. And so this is a more direct experience. So just remembering that the experience you have is always slightly different than what your travelers or your guests will have because you're logged into the platform. So we give you extra little things that you can do. And so if you ever are thinking, what is my guest going to see? Open an incognito or private browsing window and paste in the public link and look at it from there. So that's the best way to make sure you're seeing what a new customer would see as compared to what you see. Is that distinction clear, Shantae?
Yep, got it.
Wonderful. All right, so we're just going to jump back to the planner side of it. So that's what we call this. We call this the planner view. And you're basically going to want to run through all the fields on this form. You know, this is the name that will be visible to your travelers. This is the short name that builds the URLs. This is what we were talking about before. So where I said, be sure, here I'll sort of zoom in on this, be sure and pick your business name, that business alias in your business profile. Make sure to choose that properly. That's going into the URL that's going to be shared out to all of your guests and shown on social media or in your emails and things. So that's that decision. And once you make that, you don't want to change that again. And then this is specific to the specific retreat that you're running. So if this is going to be Sri Lanka 2023. So I actually strongly recommend that you put the year or even the month in the year, depending on how often you run retreats, so that you don't end up, you know, using up Sri Lanka. Like if you run it every year, it's like, wait, which one was that, right? So you might want to just add the year onto that or some other thing that makes that unique. So again, this is one of those things you can play around with it up until you share it with people and start going live. Once you share it officially, you don't want to change this again, because then the links to your sales page will break. So don't overthink it. Don't worry about it. Try to make it as short as possible, but also being somewhat descriptive. So if somebody sort of glances at it, they kind of have an idea of what that's going to be. All right. And then you can enter tags to kind of categorize things, but that's not super critical if you're not running a lot of trips. Same thing as tour series. Those are features you might need someday when you're running lots of trips. And then trip privacy is very important. It's a decision that you get to make about how you're sharing your trip. So if it's a private trip, meaning only people that you invite can come, and by invite, it means actually putting their email addresses into the platform and sending them very special magic links. So this is something where it's like very VIP, and you're not going to share it out on social media, and it's only to these individuals. Then you would do private. Very few people actually operate that way. And I would actually really strongly suggest operating most of the time in the public mode, which basically means that anyone who has access to the link can click to register and then do whatever you allow them to do on the trip page. And remembering though, because I've had some people ask me this question, just because you set it to public, like right now, I've set it to public, no one can see this link, right? Because I haven't given it to anybody. So I'm the only one who knows about it. So if you give it to your friend, your mentors, your colleagues, they can see it, but we're not putting it out there. It's not accessible by Google. So don't worry in terms of, while you're building it, you can be in public. It is safe to be in public mode, because if you're in private, it becomes hard to test. Because what I did before, where I opened and looked at it as a traveler would see it, you can't do that when it's in private mode, because no one can see it unless they're invited. So there's no public version. So I strongly recommend doing the public version. And then the only reason you would check this box is if you're doing website embed, which we can talk about in a little bit later. So basically, you're going to have that link, and because you've set it to public, then this link will activate. So I'm just going to save that will activate. And that means that I can now come and copy this link, and I can add that. If you have a website, you can make that the call to action for a button on your website. And you can even check this box to show the registration immediately. So like when they come through, they're immediately prompted to register, or you can leave that off and they will see the beautiful sales page before they're prompted to register. So that's up to you which kind of flow you want to do there. So that's the simplest way to integrate with your website. Shantae, does that make sense in terms of using that? Do you think you would you would link from a button on another website, or how are you going to do promotion?
Yes, I plan to probably do a button link on my existing website. So this, yeah, that would be helpful. And I did have that question whether or not I should keep it in private mode until I actually launched it or not, if that made a difference. So thanks for clarifying that.
Excellent. And then if you did decide to do a full integration with the website, you do need to be either power up or launch to access that. And you can actually do a little embed that looks a bit like this on your website. Slightly more advanced feature, you do have to copy a little snippet of code and add an HTML block onto your website. So if that's something that you're interested in, you can always click to learn more here and see how that's done. But it's not essential. And in fact, the simplest thing is just to link from a button. And we kind of recommend that for your first one to kind of get started, and then move to integration with the embed once you're running more retreats. But that's always an option, so feel free to explore that. Excellent. And then of course, you want to set your primary location, and you want to decide whether or not you want to show a map on the trip page. So that's an option. You can have a map at the bottom, or you can turn that feature off. So up to you. And then if it's a single day event, you can specify a time. So if you are running like a virtual retreat, or if it's just a one-day retreat, you can specify the time. Otherwise, you uncheck that box and you specify your start and end time. If you are actually not sure what your dates are, which can happen, you can actually just say that it's a 3-day retreat sometime in summer 2024, for example. So you could launch something in a sort of registration mode just to collect expressions of interest. And then you can set a date once you have a venue and enough people interested in it. And then you can click that and switch it and set it to the actual dates that you want to go. That's a powerful feature to be able to either be set dates or sort of a free text estimated dates. So this one's a really tricky one sometimes for people, is whether or not to set a close date. So you don't have to, so we can delete that, and then people will be able to register forever. It won't ever automatically close, but you might want to set a close date because, it's departing on the 3rd. So let's say, people can't register past the 22nd, something like that. So that just means that once the 22nd of September comes, this message will be shown in the footer instead of a prompt to register. And then this just is the prompt. It'll say, please register before, and then it'll put the date automatically there for you. So don't add the date here. Don't put it here because it does it automatically. So don't do that. Just say, this event registration closes on. So you could change whatever that says to whatever language you want to use. This is really important, right? This is about using the language that's right for your audience. And that's why there's all these little boxes where you can tweak the text. There's a lot of default text. You're welcome to use that, but you're also welcome to reword it to be in the language of your audience. And of course, you can put links in here. So if you do want to link off to another event, or you want to link off to a website to say, hey, this retreat is closed, but if you're still interested, click here to see what other things we're doing. And you can just click that little button there and paste your link in there. And then that will link off like that. So that's registrations. And then we have the trip time zone. This is important to set the time zone that the trip will be in, so that all the times that are shown correctly in the right time zone. And when people download them to their calendars, it puts it correctly on their calendar. So this is where the trip is, not where you are. So definitely keep that in mind when you're setting your trip time zone. And then this is going to be the trip summary heading and the trip summary. So we saw that before when we clicked preview. That is this. So that's the trip summary header, and this is the trip summary. It's quite short on this sample one. A lot of clients actually have much longer overviews, and a lot of them, in fact, embed videos, which we strongly recommend. If you do have a video, we recommend embedding that here, and you'll just use that little button, and then you can paste in your YouTube or Vimeo link there to embed a video. And if you have images, you can also upload them here. So that is how you embed either videos or images. And of course, this control allows you to do links, like I mentioned before. And very importantly, this little tricky button here allows you to jump out so that you can work with all the space that you need. And then once you're done editing that content, you can click it to go back. And if you just need a little more space, you can just drag that up and down. So that's a handy little thing to know about all of our editors. So definitely explore all the controls up here to be able to make this exactly what you want this to be, including the ability to change the font color and the font within that section. Don't use too many fonts, but make sure that the information is conveyed the way you need it to be. And then we have our share summary, which is a sort of tweet sized, or maybe I should say an X sized summary text. And this is just about 150 characters. That is going to be used in various contexts when we need a short version. So if you post it sometimes into like a Slack or a chat channel, this will get pulled in. And it also shows up in the metadata when your page goes live. If you do link to it from your website and Google starts indexing it, it will pull in the share summary as part of the metadata about that. So just in case you guys are SEO savvy, make sure that you have your keywords in here as well. So that's the overview. That's just to get started. Did we have any more questions on that, Shante?
Nope, I think that was it for that page.
Wonderful. And so I'm going to actually jump to the settings tab on the other end of this before we jump into pricing. And I'm not going to cover every single field in here because there's a lot that can be tweaked. But the important thing to focus on is your registration button label. This is your call to action. So Dr. Sherry recommends something really catchy like sign me up. It could be book now. It can be express interest. Whatever you want that button to say, you're going to change that here. And if you're using the register to pay style, which we'll show you shortly, then there will also be a little comment box where you can ask them a random question. So it could be, where did you hear about us? Or tell me what you're most excited about for this trip, or just, do you have any comments or questions? So that's just the box that allows them when they're registering to type anything in that you want to prompt them for. And if you are using the invitation component of the platform where you're sending an invitation named to particular individuals, you can give them a button to sort of decline politely so that you know that they're not interested. And so you can call that next time or no thanks or something like that. And then this next one's very, very important. We talked about it a little bit on the launch webinar, is making sure you are requiring action for explicit consent. We recommend explicit. Depending on your jurisdiction or what country you're in, you can do inferred, which means that it's pre-checked. We do not recommend none. We strongly recommend that you put your terms and conditions here, as does Dr. Sherry. So definitely have your form here, your sort of standard language around your cancellation policy, if you have a privacy policy, and your terms and conditions. So we do have a little help article here that we recommend you click through and read. Do not leave this text in the box. This is guidance text for you. And we are not lawyers, and so we cannot tell you what to write in here. But there is a little tip from Dr. Sherry that you can read here and make sure that you're taking the best guidance there. And yeah, we recommend getting legal consultation in terms of your terms and conditions, but this is where you will link to them and or just paste in a short version of your cancellation policy if you don't have a full terms and conditions. This one can be tricky, so Shante, I'll just stop and make sure you don't have any questions on this one.
Nope, I hadn't gotten this far, so just taking a few notes.
Oh, good. Yeah, so definitely click in and read that documentation there, and definitely make sure that you've got some consent on here. So definitely that says none on your trip, come in and click on that, and then you'll be able to set your consent terms. And then from here, you're going to be deciding like what language to prompt people with when they do click your registration button, what's going to be up at the top of that form. So that's the kind of thing where, again, you can kind of click on your share link and you're thinking, oh, what is that going to look like? You can just open a new tab and then you can click on that sign me up button and you see it there, right? So if you're trying stuff out, you can jump back and say, yeah, I don't want it to say that, right? So you take that out. And this is why it can be nice to be working from the sample that Dr. Sherry provided, because you can kind of work off of the sample content that she gave you. And so now you can see it's just disappeared. So, sort of work through that. One of the examples was have a link to book an appointment with you here. For those who are kind of not quite ready, they're a little bit afraid. So you can prompt them at any stage to actually jump out and book a call with you. So all of these areas you can actually put in links. So you could highlight that and click on that and enter your link to book in with you for an appointment. So that's the public version of the registration prompt. If you are using the invitation capabilities of the platform, then people who've been invited will see a slightly different thing. And so you can tune it to say, you're very special to us. And so that's why we've created this trip for you. We'd love for you to say, yes, please confirm your details below. Because if you've invited them, then they will already be pre-filled with their name and email and maybe even their phone number. So you can just indicate that they need to confirm rather than that they need to complete the form from scratch, right? So these people will just have an empty form and the people who see this one will have a pre-filled form. And then there's a bunch of different buttons and labels and things that you'll see throughout the trip page and the sales page as you're building it. And if you think to yourself, oh, I don't call them packages, I call them offerings or something like that. And we'll talk about what packages are shortly. You can feel free to come in and change that language, but it's probably fine to leave all of these as the defaults. The one thing I will suggest is your qualifying statement. This is what Dr. Sherry pushes as a strong thing to really call people to your retreat. And that's what shows here. So right above the title of your trip. Oops, sorry. And when you click on that title, it'll actually pop up to the registration form. So on the sample one, it was stand in your power. That was her qualifying statement. So if you have a qualifying statement for your retreat, definitely put that there. And if you're not sure yet, if you haven't quite found your statement, you can always just say, we invite you to join us. Something like that, right? So if you're still working on it and drafting that, you can use something that's just a little bit more straightforward. So feel free to play around with that, test it out, change it, look at it, and bounce back and forth. The beauty of this platform is that you're not going to break it, right? You're just changing the text, and then you're going to go see what that looks like. So you're not actually editing code, which is really lovely. Do you have a qualifying statement yet, Shantae?
No, I don't have that yet.
I feel like that's one of those, like, you got to sit with it for a little while and really think about it. So I look forward to seeing what people come up with as they launch their retreats. And then as we go down, and speaking of, finding your language, this is where you get to really create the language that defines your retreat. So by default, we would call that first page that you see highlights. Dr. Sherry recommends something like journey, which is a much more powerful word. So it could also just be schedule. But journey is a lot more powerful. So feel free to use that word as well. If you're going to show a detailed itinerary, you can also turn that on. It's off by default in the sample because it's in sort of sales page mode. So it's really about the overview of it. It's about the beauty of why you would go on this journey. The itinerary is something you might show as you get closer to the event, which includes things like breakfast will be at 8 a.m. and yoga will start at 8:45. and things like that. So feel free to use that feature or feel free to leave it off depending on what level of detail you want to put onto your page. There's also a really great feature that allows you to share with other people who have registered and booked into your retreat to see who else is going. If you do choose to check this box, be sure to read the detailed article on how to make sure that's done in a way that's, preserves people's preferences for privacy and things like that. But especially if you have a group that sort of is really open to connecting with each other, this can be a really lovely way for people to kind of get excited about the trip because they can see, oh, I see, Jennifer's going on this, and the reason she's going is because she's never been to Sri Lanka and she really, can't wait to spend, 7 days just really being in a completely different world, and just allowing people to sort of share why they're going on that retreat with each other in a little list of people can be quite fun. So Shante, do you think you would ever do that? Do you think you would share that list with, so it would just be names and like little mini bios and avatars, so not full private details?
I think I would like for that option to be available, but question about that, if let's say we do check that box to have that up, do they individually have the option to opt out of that if they don't want their profile shown?
Yeah, so what I'll show you when you're setting up the profile form is you would just set up some special fields to show there. And then if they don't want to fill that out, then they can just leave those blank. So you put something like preferred name and things like that. And if they choose not to fill those fields out, then it just won't appear. So that's how they would kind of opt out of it. Yeah, great question. So yeah, it's a really powerful feature, but it does need to be done consciously. So if you're not sure, then leave it off. And if you have the time to explore it, check that box and click to learn more. And you can even do complete profiles. So especially if you're running a retreat that's for other retreat leaders and maybe people who have profiles that they might want to share, like videos of their work or links to their websites or things like that, you can actually create full profiles that allow your guests to kind of share even more about themselves, which is suited more for professional gatherings, but depends on your audience for sure. And then the invoice, so we call it an invoice, and Dr. Sherry's template suggests use the term investment, so feel free to use the term that makes sense for you. And then there's also the tasks and resources or documents sections, which we'll get to later. I strongly recommend using the task system. So go ahead and leave that checked, but just recognize that doesn't appear until they have registered. So the public version doesn't bother them with tasks. The public version is trying to get them to register and pay their deposit, and then the tasks will appear for them from there. And if those tasks come with any kind of attached documents, like either a packing guide or potentially you've asked them to upload their flight itinerary, then that will actually show for them. So we'll show that in a little bit. And then you can have a contact us, which has your information on it, so you can choose to hide or show. And then this is really powerful. It's a social link. We recommend this being a private group or a private WhatsApp link, but you can also, of course, just link off to your, could just be your Instagram if you just want to drive people to kind of follow you on Instagram. But we generally recommend this as the link for this group wherever you're chatting with them. So Shante, do you do that with your groups? Do you create a Facebook group or a WhatsApp group where they can talk?
No, I haven't. Being that this is my first group I'm putting together, I have not done that previously. So that's something I have to think about and decide on.
Yeah, so it's something it's a nice extra to just invite people to jump into. And we've seen it just becoming really, really popular. So when you make a WhatsApp group, there's actually a little link that you can grab and you can just paste that into this box here. So, but if you're, first time, let's not complicate it, you can also uncheck that box. That's really the important thing, is to recognize that these options are here for you to empower you to do what you need to do for your retreat. And so if you're thinking, oh, is it right to do it? Is it right to do it? You know, the most important thing is to create something that you can manage. And so if this is an extra feature you don't need, just turn it off, and maybe you'll discover it again next time. So that's the beauty of this kind of system, is it's just a click of a box away, whether you need it or whether you need it to go away. And then there's a couple of little default email messages. So when you send an invitation, this is the standard text, so you can modify that to be the language that's appropriate for your group. And then this is the confirmation that shows up once people register. So this will appear in a pop-up, and if you check this box. And so I'm just going to show you what that looks like. If you click here, and that's that little comment prompt, and that's my consent. And then this is that pop-up. So this is really important in terms of giving people instructions like, okay, now you've registered, but now you need to pay. So this is what we call the register to pay flow. And we strongly recommend this for smaller retreats. There is also a checkout flow, which does it all in one page, but that means that you don't collect their email address if they don't pay. So if you are running small retreats where you have a lot of really like one-on-one communication with your guests, we strongly recommend this style, because now you have their email address. Now you know they're interested, and you can reach out to them. And in fact, you can require a phone number as well. And then you can actually call them. So we strongly recommend this mode. And in that case, there will be this pop-up that confirms, great, you've registered. So this is all text you get to enter. So make sure you change this. Do not use the text from the template, because it'll be wrong. So be sure and modify this text. And if you don't like the pop-up, go ahead and turn off the pop-up. It will also be emailed to them, and it will also be shown here on the page. So this is information that we are determined to put in front of people. Pop up on the page and emailed to them. So put the most important information that you want people to know about how to make sure they secure a room. And if there's any kind of special things that you need to mention, this is the kind of thing, if you have a restriction, like you know, people who have a heart condition shouldn't go, you should put that here. You should say, hey, thank you for your interest. Just letting you know, there is a strenuous part of this program. And so if you have a heart condition, we strongly discourage your attendance, or something like that. So you can kind of put a little restriction there. You can also say something like, thanks for registering. We'll be in touch to do a screening. Please don't pay until we confirm that you qualify for this. Because we do know we have some retreat organizers who are very picky about the kinds of people that they want on certain retreats, because they want to create a particular group. So you can actually say that here and sort of recommend that, or just advise, please don't pay your deposit until I've confirmed and we have a call. So that would be, you would link here to say, please book that call with me, or indicate that you're just going to call them. Dante, do you do any kind of filtering, like any kind of, screening of your attendees?
I haven't at this point yet, so we'll see how this first one goes, and then determine if I need to do that. This is going to be a small one, so it will be more intimate. So I already have a few people of interest. So I have a feeling this one is going to be more familiar faces anyway.
That's always such a nice way to start. So these are some of the challenges that you get to as you get bigger, and you need to filter and say, well, there's 30 people interested, but I only have 12 spots. And so you want to actually kind of curate that a little bit more. So that's just some advice. So you'll notice what I'm giving you, there's the technical side to this, which is just like, how do I do this? But then there's also the art of this, right? And that's the like figuring out the language, figuring out, the structure that you want to create. What kind of customer experience are you creating for people as they're going through this? And you'll notice here that now it says my name on the page. And actually, when I clicked on that, it takes me into my profile. This is the power of the YouLi platform, is the fact that now this is my page. I'm no longer on the public page. I'm now on my page because I've registered and identified myself. And now I'm picking a package. And so we've given you two samples, which is the seeking roommate and the book a room. So that's like, I want to either book that room as a single person, or I want to, sorry, book the entire room, or I want to do the twin share. So this is just completely based on the way you're structuring your room allocation. So it could be that you just have single rooms and they're all single rooms, in which case there's kind of only one option. But if you have the option for people to sort of book an entire room by themselves or book it as a double because they're going with a friend, then that's where you would give them to these different options here. And once they pick their package, then they'll see how much they owe for that package, and they'll be able to add on any add-ons, and then it'll jump them down to choose whether or not they're going to pay their deposit or they're going to pay in full. And so you'll notice when you're first setting this up that it says choose a payment method, payments have been disabled. That's when you know you haven't connected your Stripe, and you need to jump back up into your account and connect your Stripe, and then that option will be shown here. I'm going to pause for a second because I know this is often the most important aspect. So Shante, have you gotten into this part of it? Do you have any questions on packages so far?
Yeah, no, I haven't gotten that far on my site yet. So just kind of scrolling through there and seeing. I'm still trying to figure out my pricing package because it's a little bit not so cut and dry because every room is different at the retreat site. So, and it's kind of an all-inclusive, you know, all of the trip, all of the explorations and all of the things that we'll be doing. They've given me just a set price for each room that's inclusive of everything that we're doing, the food and everything. So each room is priced differently based on the layout of the room. So it's a little bit tricky trying to figure that part out, how I'm going to lay that out.
Well, that's interesting. So normally what we would recommend is having like a different package for each room in that case. Now on the starter package, there's only 2 packages. So you'd only be able to do 2 different rooms. How many rooms do you have?
There is an option of, is it 8 or 10? I think it's 8 rooms.
Yeah, so I'll connect with you afterwards in terms of which plan you would need to get access to 8 packages. And then you would actually click into here and you would, so by default that's checked, and so you can uncheck that and you can set it to 1. So each room would be a package in that case, it sounds like, because the way to think about it in terms of like how many packages do I need, it's based on the price. So what you just said is every room is priced differently, right? Which is an interesting complication, but you know, it absolutely happens. And so that's why you would need 8 different packages, because you have 8 different prices. So and so the way I would probably recommend doing that is, so you would have the rose room, and then how many people can be in that room? Is it just one person?
Well, there's a few rooms that are just single occupancy, and then there's a couple that are double occupancy.
Perfect. Okay, so let's assume the rose room is double occupancy. Then you're actually going to select this one, must book at least the minimum occupancy, and you're going to set that to 2. And so basically they have to book for 2 people to take this room, unless, are you offering them the option to request a roommate for this, or are you expecting them to sort of book it as a couple or as friends?
Yeah, I would like to give the option to where they could, if they want to have a roommate. The thing though is that the way the retreat center has it priced, it's the same price whether there's 1 person or 2 people, because it includes everything else as well. If that makes sense.
So then
they didn't adjust the pricing just because there was 2 people in the room.
Well, in a way that makes it a little bit easier. So you could, if you're not going to force people to book it as 2, so that's why it says must book. So if you want to force people to book for 2, then you set it to 2. But if you actually are happy for them to book as 1, then set it to any. And then you actually will set this to 2 because 2 people can book this, right? Because
Okay.
the double occupancy sharing with roommate. So you would just make it clear what they're booking. They're booking a spot in the Rose room and they're going to share with a roommate, right? So that's the
Gotcha.
option that they've got there, right? Does
Yeah.
that make
But
sense?
if it's a couple, let's say it's a couple, yeah, if it's a couple that's
Mhm.
booking and they would select both spots
So
in the room.
then, yeah, so then what we would do there is, if you want to allow people to register, for some reason that option's not there. Yeah, sorry. There's a way to make it possible for you to book for more than one person. When you're registering, you can specify how many people in your invitation group. So for some reason that's not on in this account at the moment, but yeah, so you would have them register and they can either register themselves separately and then you can put them together, or you can have them register together and they kind of come together in that way. Let me just show you what it looks like when you force people to book as a couple, because that's the other thing you can do. Actually, you could make it, you could separate the packages. So you say double occupancy. Well, actually, book for 2 people. So you can actually make it clear, like you're booking for 2 people, or you could say book for a couple and then limit that to just 1, let's say. And then, oh, sorry, I'm modifying an existing package that already has multiple people or people booked onto it. So now when I come here and I reload this, and you can see book for 2 people, you can see that there's only 1 left because I've only got 3 spots. And then, let's see. When I
Can you
choose
zoom
that
out of your
room,
screen just a little bit?
oh,
Can
yeah.
you zoom out just a little bit? I can't see the full screen.
Is that better?
A
Or
little bit. It's still cut off a little bit. Looks
let
like.
me stop and reshare. I think maybe I had zoomed in before. How's that?
Yeah, that's better. That's
Oh,
good.
good. Yeah, so when you pick the Rose room, it's going to change it to say your group size has been updated to fit this package's required number. So because I picked it for 2, it actually forces me to book for 2. So if you want to, so you can create the couple package versus the single package, right? So that's the way to sort of offer that option, is to have one package that requires that you book for 2 and one package that is a solo one. And then what will happen is once I pay, it's actually going to prompt me to enter a name for this person. So, after I've actually booked in, then it'll be like, oh, okay, how much, what is this person's name? But for now, it just sort of says it's your group member.
Okay.
So the package setup can be quite interesting, and you want to try to work through that. You almost want to sit down with a spreadsheet and kind of figure out well, what are my prices and what are my configurations, what are my options, and then kind of come back in. And we might actually do another session that just really focuses in on the various configurations of packages. Because there are so many options. One of the other ones that we have is the ability to specify choose occupancy upon booking, and the price is based on occupancy. So that's another way to do what you're talking about. So you can book it as a single or a double. And so you could actually say, well, if you're a single, it's this. If you're 2 people, it's this. Actually, I think maybe for your case, this might be a better option. But this feature only works with checkout flow. So just something to sort of keep in mind in terms of the 2 different options there. So if in this case, you said that it's the same price, regardless of whether or not they're single or double. right? The per person price would be the
Right.
same. So then it would just be the same. But remembering that this is a per person price, and everything on the platform, all the prices are all per person. So whenever you're trying to come up with a price, and that's why this then says the total is 11,798, because if they book for 2 people, they're going to pay twice that amount. If they book for 1 person,
Gotcha.
they're just paying for that. So that's an option to consider, is to allow them to book up to 3 people in this room, 2 people in this room, et cetera. So if you have a quad room, you could let people book up to 4, or they can just book 1. And then you can allow people to pay separately. This can be really handy if you've got roommates and things like that. So people who are registering for them and their sister, but they want their sister to pay on their own, then you can give them the option to pay separately, and then an email will be sent to the sister to say, please pay your deposit. And so that's a fun option to explore as well. The bookings inventory is important if you want to sort of cap the number of rooms. Remember what I was saying earlier, you'll probably want to have 8 rooms with a cap of 1 is probably, so 8 packages with a cap of 1. And then very importantly, whether or not it's published, disabled, or hidden from public. So if you want people to pick it, make it published. If you made it and it's no longer available, then you want to disable it. Like if people already booked into it, you can't delete it, but you can set it to disabled, and then it won't be visible to, won't be selectable by anyone. And then if you want it to be something that you can put people on, but that other people cannot, then you make it hidden from public. So that means like maybe you have like a special room and you kind of want to hold it for somebody. You can have them register onto the trip, and then you can allocate them on the back end onto the package and then let them pay. That can be a great way to kind of like hold special rooms or special packages. So that's called hidden from public. And then you can do the description. So this is really important, especially for what you just described. If you have each package is a different room, you'll want to put photos of each of those rooms. So if you have like a layout, a little map, something like that, you'll actually want to click into here and you'll want to add that image. So make sure you choose and upload that image there, because that's going to help people like, oh, why is that one 3,000? That one's 4,000. It's like, that one has a bigger window, and they can see it really clearly. And if there's anything like this room, you have to climb upstairs to get to this room, you might want to say that in the description here, so that as they're choosing their room, they know what they're booking into. And this works the same as our other description boxes in terms of the way that you can expand and add videos and things like that. All right. And then finally, there is a price per night option. So if you are actually allowing people to, or if you're pricing based on the number of nights, so like this is a 5-night retreat. If you're being charged $300, or sorry, not you're being charged, if you want to charge your travelers $300 per night, then this is how you would do it. And the system automatically calculates that for you. And then if you are using checkout flow, you can actually let them to select arrival and departure dates. So maybe you have like a core retreat of 5 days, but they can arrive kind of earlier and maybe, stay later, but it's that price per night. You can turn that feature on if you're using the checkout flow style. Do you think you would ever use that, Svante, the sort of ability to price per night and let them pick it?
Probably, well, not for this one in particular, but it could come in handy for future events.
So that's a quick rundown of the packages. Play around with them, and like I said, sort of see what it looks like on the page as you're editing them, and toggle between them and see what the descriptions look like. So it's a really boring description. I strongly recommend images in your descriptions. And then this is where you can choose your booking style. So this is something I keep referring back to: register to pay versus checkout flow. So register to pay is what I've been demonstrating, which means that they have to type in their information and then they can pay. There is also the option to do checkout flow. So this is if you just need a booking page and you've already sold them somewhere else and you want to send them straight through and just have them fill out the form and book, then you would do what's called checkout flow before the trip page. Oh. Oh, right. Give me 1 second while I connect my Stripe account so I can finish this process. And so actually that's really important. As you're going through this, you're going to find that you do need to connect your Stripe account in order to do all of these kinds of settings. So keep that in mind that you'll want to do that before you dig into this too far. Otherwise, you'll end up like this, having to to verify your account while you're trying to work through your package description. Do you have any other questions on what we've covered so far?
Nope, I was just going to ask that question on the differences between those, the register to pay and the checkout flow. So you answered
Perfect.
that.
And I'll jump in now and show you that. All right, let's see if I can save that now. All right, just give me 1 more second. All right. Okay, now we're back. So we're going to share that screen. So I had another error, which is that I need to have a prompt for the Stripe payment. So that should be credit card. And so I'm just going to type that into that box. So remember that for Stripe payments, you can actually connect ACH, you can do Afterpay. There's a number of different options that you can have. So click on the learn more to learn about that. If you're just doing the basics, you can just type in credit card. This is also where you can pass on a surcharge. So if you're on Starter, it's a 3% YouLi booking fee on top of Stripe fees, which can be anywhere from 1.9 to 2.9%. So pass on as much of the fees as you can. And we do recommend upgrading to the next levels to drop that down to 1% as soon as you can. So then I'm going to save this. And now we've got the checkout flow style. So now when I click on this and do a share and open this page up, looks totally different. So this is a checkout flow. So this is not a sales page. This is a booking page, right? So that's like when you think about, do I want checkout flow before the trip page? That's because you're like, I just want to send people to book and they already know what they want and they just need to be able to pick it from here. So that's what this style does. And so I think probably not the right thing for most sort of smaller retreat organizers, but you might want to consider checkout flow after the trip page, which is actually going to be, it'll look like this. We've seen this before, but now instead of a pop-up when you click on this, it takes you to the checkout flow. So that's the difference between register to pay and checkout flow after you've seen the trip page. This now is one transaction. So if a person starts to fill this out and then changes their mind, maybe they get to the credit card part and their credit card is expired, so they have to go get another one and then the kids distract them. So they don't complete the process, right? Then you don't know that they got halfway. So that's the downside of checkout flow. But the nice thing about checkout flow is it kind of is an all-in-one step. So this is a customer experience choice for you and for your retreat flow. Like if you need to put a barrier up, like, hey, I need to call you before you pay, register to pay is the way to go. If you feel like, you know what, I've got a bunch of people that are super interested, let's just make it really straightforward, make it one transaction where they put all their information and make their payments. And so I would suggest for most of the people in the Wanderlust community, I would choose either register to pay or checkout flow after the trip page. All right. So we've covered a lot. So we've kind of gone through the hour and we actually haven't gotten through to all the things that the platform does. But basically, you've kind of, hopefully by now you've gotten that idea of like how you navigate the system, right? And by the time you've kind of set those core features up, you should kind of get an idea of how you make the changes and then how you verify them on your sales page. And this is where you're going to come in and edit your itinerary items. So these are highlights. These are going to show on that front page. They're very big images. And this is the why. Why is this person going on this trip? This is also where you can make add-ons. So this is where you can check the option to make it optional and set a price. So this is really good for like a massage, a hot air balloon ride, maybe an extra night, something like that. So you can use the add-ons. That's something that you do here. You can also check to set, oh, I only have 5 spots for this add-on. So that's where you configure the optional add-ons like I showed you earlier. And you can also have a response due date. So they have to add it on 3 months prior to departure, for example. And you can even default it to be selected when people register. So they have to opt out instead of opting in. So those are all good options for you when you're creating these highlights and itinerary items. You can even make it optional, but not cost anything. So it could be like a shopping trip. And you can just say, hey, be sure and bring some cash for the shopping excursion. Let us know if you're going so we can have that list when the bus departs. But it's included, it's not extra, it's just optional. So you can allow that to allow people to sort of tell you whether or not they're going on that optional element of your trip. And then, of course, there's lots of description boxes. You're going to find most of your time is spent filling in description boxes and finding beautiful language to describe the trips that you're creating. And you can even choose the visibility for what who can see these things. But I would suggest for now, stick to everyone, and only if it comes up, remember that you can make an item that only certain people can see. So you could actually restrict like, oh, okay, well, these people are doing this special extra thing that nobody else knows about. You can create that and show only to those people. So you can also toggle between highlight and itinerary item. What's the difference? The difference is the highlights are shown on that main page by default, and there's no dates. And when you make it an itinerary item, it's going to require that you set dates, and you can also enter times. So that's when you kind of start getting into the details of things. But remember, if you're an itinerary person, you can do a day-by-day itinerary, and you can check the box to also show on highlights. And so you can have an itinerary item for each of your days, check that box, and then you get the benefit of both the itinerary view and the highlight view. So that's usually what we recommend. But if you don't have dates or you're not really focused on the dates, then you can stick to the highlight items as shown in the sample trip. And once you start getting payments coming in, you're going to see them popping into here. So you can see that I've got payments coming in from 2 people, and I have Jen has registered but not yet booked. So definitely need to follow up to find out why she hasn't booked. This will only happen if you're in the register to pay mode. If you use checkout flow, only the people that have paid will appear on this list. And you mentioned that you have people you want to invite. So if you have people who are already interested, you can either just click and copy the link and send it to them and say, hey, please register. Or you can pre-add them. So you can put their name and email address here, set them as invited, and then you can send them an invitation. So you can add them, check the box and click send invite. And then you can send them a message that says, would you like to go on this? Please confirm and pay your deposit. So it just depends on the experience that you want to give people with that. And then be sure when you're setting this up to configure your profile and registration form. So this shows you the fields that will appear on the registration form. And this is where I was mentioning the mini bio, like if you were going to do that, like sharing with other people thing, this is where you could describe, you could say mini bio shared with other attendees, right? And then you can, then this is, you can decide that it shows here, or if you don't want it to appear, you can choose planner only. So this is where you can control the, like who can see what data. But you don't necessarily want to make this required because you don't want to force people to do that. So again, that depends. Are you expecting them to complete it, or are you expecting them to, like, is it a requirement or is it just an optional thing? So think about that before you check the required box. And also think about whether or not you want to collect something on registration or not. So for example, date of birth, maybe that's a really important piece of information you need. And so you actually want to collect it on the registration form. You can check that box and that will actually appear on the registration form. So they cannot pay until they give you that information. This might be important for, some sort of information that you need to pass on to your suppliers. We don't recommend doing a lot of that. We recommend collecting more of that information after they pay. So I've just kind of given you a little bit of a whirlwind on the task system. So the profile and registration forms are under the tasks and custom forms section. So we'll probably do a follow-up on this session to kind of dig in a little bit deeper on that side of things. But this is where you'll come in and sort of decide what tasks you need to give to people. Could be a packing one. So you could come in here and say, oh, I don't want to make them book travel insurance, but here's my packing list. And then you can just change this content to say, see the list attached. And then you can attach you can come here and select a document from your computer and upload a packing list here, and that will appear to them on their trip page. And then you can just have a type of done to say, yep, I've read the packing list. So this is a really cool feature that most booking platforms don't have. And so I'm going to show you quickly what that looks like here. So when I'm registered, I can say, here's my book travel insurance and here's my limitation of liability waiver task. So when I click into this, I have to type to consent to the liability waiver. Just again, this is boilerplate text. You have to replace this with your own legal text or delete it. So if you're not going to use it, then if you don't have your own waiver language, don't keep this in the view. Is there anything that I didn't cover today that's that you feel like you need to know today before we wrap up, Shantae?
Nothing that's coming to mind. Thank you for the first few steps that I've taken already. I think you answered some, the questions that I had to at least get started and start digging in.
Yeah. Well, that's the idea. And I think it's definitely an evolution. One thing to keep in mind when you're building these is it's not ever done. Like you get to the point where you launch it and it's ready for taking payments, but remember that you can continue to adjust, like especially with the tasks. You can always figure that out after you've started taking bookings, because if you have enough time before the retreat, you can just add those later, and then you can come in and email people and say, hey, I've added some tasks for you. Can you please come in and take a look? And we also send automated reminders off of those tasks. So don't feel like you have to get it all done before you launch. You can stagger it out, and you can just tell people that you've made updates and have them come back in. And that's the beauty of it being actually a personalized page for them and not just a generic booking page like it would be on a website.
Awesome.
All right. Well, I'm glad we got through at least the first portion of this and get you going. And we look forward to seeing what you launch. Do you know what your launch date is going to be?
No, I'm hoping it will be, where are we at? I'm hoping to have this done in the next 2 weeks, get it launched.
Yes. Oh, I love it. Well, I look forward to seeing that, and we'd be happy if you want to share that with the team to share that out in the community as well. So let people know that you've launched it. I do recommend that you go in and set your business profile and publish your profile as well. And that will put it onto the community so that other people can see your retreats. So definitely check out that option. Once you've got your retreat ready to go, you'll also want to put that in the profile as well. All right. Thanks for letting me run over a little bit. There's always so many good things to share. And I look forward to the next onboarding session where we can go a little bit deeper into some of the other features.
Thank you.
Bye.